folks online. So
I'm Robin McElhenney. I'm the Transit Capital Program Manager in the Transit Bureau.
I'm John Carton. I'm chair of the committee.
I'm Lauren Breyer, Transit Management Intern.
Lynn Rivers, Transit Bureau Chief.
Paul Mounier, I'm the service planner for the ART system.
Josh Drucker, the new Transit Technology Manager.
Ron Decker, a member of the committee.
David Frank, Transportation Grants Administrator.
David Sisson, member of the committee.
James Davenport, Vice Chair of the committee.
Okay, so how about the folks online? Let's start with the committee members first, if you'll introduce yourselves.
Hi, this is Alex Comana, TAC member.
Okay.
Hi, this is Alexa Mavroidis, TAC member and chair of the Accessibility Subcommittee.
All right.
Harvey Berlin, member of the Transit Advisory Committee.
Okay, Harvey.
Laura McNeil, member of the TAC and member of the Accessibility Subcommittee.
Okay. Any other committee members?
Mariela Garcia Goldberg, also a member.
All right.
Patrick Thompson, also a member.
Say the name again.
Patrick Thompson.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Okay, any other committee members? If not, how about staff?
Hi, good evening. Hui Wang, Deputy DES Director.
Okay, nice to have you with us, Wei.
Good evening. Pierre Holloway, Assistant Transit Bureau Chief.
Okay, Pierre.
WMATA Service Coordinator.
Kirk. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Clinton Edwards, Transit Services Manager, Arlington County Transit Bureau.
All right. Thank you, Clinton.
Rocco Visconti, Management Intern.
Okay. All right. Any other staff members online? Okay. How about any members of the general public?
Good evening. This is Andre Stafford, Metro Bus Planning, Northern Virginia Bus Services.
Hi, Andre. Okay. Anybody else that we haven't heard from?
Doris Ray, member of the Disability Advisory Commission and member of the public.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you again for everybody participating. This is sort of new territory for us, doing it hybrid style, but we'll certainly make the most of it. It's good to see everybody's smiling faces again. All right, so next item is public comment. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to comment? Okay, if not, let's go to approval of the minutes from the May 9th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, all right. Now, before we jump into the agenda here, I'd just like to comment briefly, and if we have comments from others about the transit projects tour that we took in July, which to me is always a fascinating meeting where we get out there firsthand and see what's going on in the field, see the projects, that we've heard about, read about, that we know about, but see them firsthand and see the magnitude, see the challenges and, the connectivity, everything else that's involved with it. That's always a great opportunity. So I want to thank the staff again for putting that together and doing such a great job.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, I have to say that's one of my favorite meetings of the year is get out there in the field.
Well, I would say it's ours as well. It gives us an opportunity to show off and showcase what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found it interesting that they don't combine the bus maintenance with other county vehicles. There's a lot of, the county has a lot of vehicles, police cars, school buses and so on. But if you've got 80 buses, that certainly justifies a facility for buses alone, considering there are different maintenance requirements.
Right.
Seems sensible.
And also, that also has the funding opportunities have a lot to do with that as well. You can't mix the
buses and
exactly.
cars. Yeah.
So logistically, we can't. Legally, we can't do it as well.
Okay, great. Now, let me just ask a question here. So are the people online, are they able to hear us okay? Okay, good. Okay. All right, well, let's get started with our next agenda item here, which is the Arlington Transit Real-Time Challenges Update.
Awesome, that's gonna be me.
Okay.
I'm gonna work on presenting on the screen. Let's see if it works. It's connecting, sorry.
That's right. And why don't you introduce yourself again?
Yes, hi everyone and everyone at home. I'm the new Transit Technology Manager. I've been here at Arlington since the very beginning of June. But I've been in transit for coming up on 10 years in about 6 months. So
okay,
doing all sorts of stuff from operations to planning and technology as well.
Great.
So let's do. I think I'm stealing the screen here. Just gotta present. Awesome. Okay, so real-time challenges and update.
And Josh, before you get
Yes.
started, let me just make a general comment. I think with this being hybrid, it's probably best to let Josh go ahead and do his whole presentation before we ask questions. We'll save those for the end.
Sure, that works for me.
Okay.
So for real-time in transit, there's 3 parts that make up our information kind of backbone. It's our vehicle position, trip updates, and alerts. And I'll get into each of them in a second about what each of them are and where we stand with each of these different avenues for updating real-time information. So let's see. For vehicle positions, this is pretty much your GPS location, and we are all set, squared away in this avenue of real-time updates. The locations of our buses gets published to third-party applications, like all the ones listed on the screen, the Transit app, Move It, Google Maps, and Apple Maps. And if you see the bus tracking live on a map, it's been accurate. ART even has its own website to track buses. It's right there listed at the bottom. It's our real-time website, and you can see a map of all the buses moving around. You can plan a trip using that application, and any vehicle position you see is accurate. It's not gonna make up where a bus is if you see it on the map. The next one is trip updates, and this is something we're working on getting everything up to speed on this one. If there are any delays, cancellations, or any disruptions to service, even if it's something small like police activity at a single stop for just a single trip of a single route. Currently, we would just show the planned schedule of when we get there. If there wasn't activity at that stop. But we're working on being able to update the real-time information and publishing that, for example, that stop might be closed and we're going to skip it this one trip due to just the disruption in service from police activity or whatever happens out on the road. And when we have that up to date, then all of those same third-party applications for trip planning services will also have that information presented that, we aren't able to go to that stop that one time. That's being worked on now, and again, we'll see all these kinds of changes for more accurate information on this avenue by the end of the year. And lastly, we have alerts. These are more messages from the operations team explaining in more layman's terms what the disruption to the service or the transit network is. And as I'm sure many of you know, we do have an alert system currently in place. It sends texts and emails anytime that we have some sort of disruption in service. But those same third-party applications don't display those messages from the operations team yet. But we just need to take the format of our alerts, and we've got to put it into a transit format. So we're going to have to kind of translate this code from one format to another. So that way we can take those same alerts and also display it on all of those third-party applications. We're working on those last two pieces, the trip updates, which is all those disruptions in service, and the alerts, which are the messages from dispatch explaining them simultaneously, and they'll come out together over the next couple of months. And then our operations team will get to use it and really, over time, become experts at what they're saying and how they're saying it. Does anyone have any questions?
Question I have is, so for the positioning, how does that get relayed?
So we have two different GPS pieces of hardware on the vehicle, and it sends a signal from the bus to a server, and it gets put out online. I believe every 30 seconds it gets updated per vehicle. So it might be, if you're looking at multiple vehicles, you might see more updates than 30 seconds, but it's at least every 30 seconds you'll see the vehicle update its position.
So are all the vehicles updating continuously?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as they're on.
Okay. And can you tune into just one particular vehicle?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, okay.
Would you guys want to see, I would love to show, and sharing PowerPoints, let's see if I can share. I'm going to stop sharing and share my screen. I would love to show the ART real-time information. So on our website, we do have trip planning services. We've got shortcuts to it here, but we also have shortcuts there and here. Those are both trip planning services. And then I want to show this link. This is our real-time information with a map, and you can see the routes on there and the buses in real time. You can select the different routes that you want to see. And then it will show you the actual location of the buses on the routes. You can see them kind of moving, and plan your trip.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, other questions for Josh?
And anyone online as well?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that there's like, you're working on making sure the art system shows the delays on the system now. What does it show, if like that's gonna come in a couple months, what does it show now if there's a delay?
Currently, it shows the scheduled time. So if we're scheduled to be there in 5 minutes, it'll show, it's gonna be coming in 5 minutes. But it won't show it with the real-time logo. Looks like a Wi-Fi signal above the estimated time. It'll just show the number of minutes that is estimated to be there, based on the schedule.
So right now, if it's delayed and I go on like the next bus, it wouldn't let me know, or
If the bus is tracking, it will show the for delays, it will show for delays, it will show the next bus arrival. But if, for example, there's a maintenance issue, bus catches a flat tire, and that bus, they're swapping it out. During that time, during the swap out time, it might show the scheduled time and not that the bus is being swapped out.
Okay.
But as soon as we have the trip updates up and running, it will actually show you, oh, this one stopped for a moment, and then it's going to start up again.
Okay. All right. Other questions for Josh? Yeah.
You mentioned the third-party applications. I mean, if someone wanted to download it, is it just a regular simple process to do that?
Absolutely. I mean, Google Maps, Apple Maps are the two most common because they're already downloaded on most people's smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest two transit applications are the Transit app and Move It, and we're compatible with all of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. No further questions. Josh, thanks for that.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Let's move on to the Arlington Transit Strategic Plan and comments from public engagement. Who's doing that one?
Yes, good afternoon, Transit Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Excuse me. So tonight we're going to come to you reviewing our strategic plan recommendations. Excuse me. And talk about the outreach we did this summer of 2023. My name is Clinton Edwards. I'm the Transit Services Manager. I'll be joined by Paul Munier, the project manager for this project, and also Lynn Rivers will finish out the presentation. She is the Transit Bureau Chief. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the slides. So next slide, please, Paul. All right, we'll just go over briefly the agenda. We'll spend most of our time on the public engagement until we turn it over to Paul to go into the actual recommendations. So for the agenda, we're going to talk about the implementation and the timeline, the public engagement round 2 from the summer, how we reached people, what we heard, and our recommended service changes. Before I continue, can everyone in the room hear me loud and clear and online?
Yes.
All right, next slide, please. But before we get into our actual implementation, just a reminder for everyone what our desired outcomes are. If you look to your map to the right, we took the county and broke it into 4 quadrants: north, west, the Columbia Pike area; south, the Shirlington area; and the east, Pentagon City, Crystal City, East Pentagon and Crystal City. What our desired outcomes from this project were we were looking to improve service to key destinations where folks want to go. We want to simplify the transit network with more direct routing without having more one-seat rides and having folks not have to transfer to get where they wanted. More equitable and efficient distribution of the transit access and resources, and finally provide more convenient and reliable transit service on off-peak hours and weekends. And Paul will get more into that bullet point there. Next slide, please, Mr. Munier. Implementation. With this Arlington Transit Strategic Plan, these recommendations will be phased over 10 years, starting in fiscal year 2025 through fiscal year 2035. The timing of these changes is informed by the public input and available financial resources. So as we continue to look to implement more of these recommendations over this 10-year span, we will continually come back and having public engagement to just make sure that we're still on track. The next bullet point kind of speaks to that. Our annual review of the recommendations to consider. Basically, annually, we're going to see if these recommendations continue to pass the smell test. Are the recommendations still feasible? Are the recommendations still desirable? And are adjustments to recommendations needed? We just want to look and say, as this document ages and we get closer and closer to the end of this 10-year horizon, if things change and conditions change within the county, we want to be able to be responsive to those and not just follow the static plan and just try to be dynamic and nimble where we are with those recommendations. Next slide, please, Mr. Munier. Concurrent transit studies. There's a lot of synergy here between all of the different transit initiatives and studies that we have. First here, you see the Arlington Transit Strategic Plan, which is the topic of this. However, we are also doing a Title VI program update, which is required by the Federal Transit Administration, which looks at equity planning and making sure that all of our services are evenly distributed and dispersed throughout the county. On top of that, and working with that one, looking at doing a transit signal priority, which improves service operation through traffic signal control. Many of you all are aware of the zero emissions study, the ZEB study, which looks at the propulsion of the fleet. Currently, the ART fleet is 100% compressed natural gas. And so this study will help inform us as we look at our different propulsion types in the future, as which type of propulsion we will move forward with, and also how many vehicles that will require as we move forward. And then the overlay with the WMATA Better Bus Network, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, they are looking at a re-envisioning of their bus network. Many of you all may be aware that WMATA runs more revenue hours within the county that Arlington Transit does, which works well for us because they provide that type of a spine service for us for going outside of the county. And so with them looking at doing the better bus network and looking at changes at their overall network, we want to make sure that all of these things, especially the transit strategic plan, are cognizant of that and that we can continue to provide great transit services to folks that live, work, reside here in Arlington County. But of course, our topic today is the Arlington Transit Strategic Plan. Next slide, please. How we got here. Many of you all have seen this slide before, so I'll just whiz right through this one. Started last summer looking at the current conditions, moved into the service recommendations development during the winter and spring. We developed the final service recommendations this summer, did a robust public engagement part 2 this summer as well. And we are at the very last slide looking to submit the final transit strategic plan in the fall of 2023 to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Next slide, please. Now we get to talk about the fun that we had this summertime. This was an awesome opportunity for staff to go and engage the public all around Arlington County. We did 18 pop-up events, Saturdays, Sundays, weekends, at movies, at metro stations. It was an awesome experience just going out and engaging with the public and really getting their thoughts. You see the picture right there. That is one of our awesome interns, Rocco, who was out at one of the public engagement events. It was all hands on deck. Everyone from our most senior leadership within the Bureau all the way to our interns were out and engaged the public. So right below Rocco, you can see this 41 Columbia Pike Boston Courthouse. So what we did during these public engagements is that we presented, if you look to your left, you'll see the existing conditions. And then to the right of that, you'll see the recommendations for the Arlington Strategic Plan. So we gave folks the opportunity to weigh in on these changes, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, how much you think it'll help your life or how much you think it'll hurt your life. And so through that, we were able to receive over 1,800 comments on the proposed service changes in person. And then even through the online feedback form, we were able to receive over 1,200 feedback, 1,200 comments through the online feedback form, excuse me. We've collected 595 forms through 18 pop-up events. We had the proposed changes were able to be translated into the languages you see to the right of the form: Spanish, Arabic, Amharic, Mongolian, and Chinese. It was an awesome experience. I think that all the staff that were able to participate really, really enjoyed being out and being in the service area and really engaging with the public. And so a lot of what we received during the public, we took the recommendations out to the public. And there were some things that the public just wanted to see more of, like we want Sunday service on X route. So as we refined the final recommendations, we took those comments very seriously, sifted through every single comment, and came up with our final recommendations that Paul is going to get into momentarily. Next slide, please. Paul, what did we hear during this public engagement? The key themes that can be addressed by the Arlington strategic plan are those themes of frequency, service span, hours of operations, the amount of time the bus is actually on the road, and the connectivity, making it easier for people to get where they need to go. There are some other factors there that we heard as key themes, but these top three are going to be addressed by the ATSP. And to no further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Monnier so he can wow you all with all of our outstanding recommendations from this intense and great effort that we've been undertaking for the past year.
All right, good evening, Paul Mounier. I'm the service planner. I was project manager for this project. I'm going to go through the recommendations we have. They're broken up into three, essentially time periods: short term, medium term, and long term. As noted earlier, this is a 10-year plan, so obviously everything is not going to be implemented day one. It will be implemented over the course of those 10 years. So this will take a little bit of time. I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but I would like to get through all the recommendations so that you have a real good overview of the exact scope of what we're talking about in terms of changes to service.
Yeah, that's good. We'll hold the questions. Yeah.
Appreciate it. First, Route 41 and 45, this is a change that's already taken place in conjunction with the implementation of the 16M along Columbia Pike. The 16M is a 12-minute service along Columbia Pike. 16G and H were taken out of the neighborhoods, and additional service was added to the 45 and 41 to cover the service that was lost in the neighborhoods. Route 53 and Route 61. These two implementations have to happen together. Essentially, what this is recommending is to eliminate the 61 and reconfigure the 53 to go from in the North County to Roslyn and take over a segment of the 61 that would be eliminated. In addition, we would also be proposing to increase the span of service to all day. Both these routes currently are peak period routes, commuter routes. They're only operating a couple hours a day in the morning and the evening and once every 45 minutes. So increasing frequency, increasing span, and saying, actually putting a real fixed route service out there and see if we can increase the use of bus service in North County. Route 75, increase in weekday frequency, improve service to Wakefield and Kenmore High Schools. This has been one of our faster growing routes, and it has a lot to do with the fact that Kenmore Middle School is the highest participating school that we have, and Also, a lot of comments from the public, particularly people that use this service that we met out in the field, expressing how important it was and how much they would like to see increased frequency on that. Route 77. Route 77 has Sunday service. Currently, we run this 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. People did indicate they would like to have that Sunday service. Again, a lot of comments from people who actually are out in the service area and using the 77. Route 84, extend route to Arlington, transform to an express route to Pentagon City. This route right here, and you can see here these green boxes, this is the neighborhood that the 84 goes through. We're essentially having it, it currently comes and goes directly to Pentagon City. We're going to have it come visit Arlington and then give it an express route from Arlington to Pentagon City. This is the only route that remains as a commuter route working during the peak periods. It is one of the better performing routes, but it does serve an important service to the people who do use it. Route 85, new route serving Arlington Transit Center, Aurora Hills, Crystal City. This route is in reaction to something that we saw in the Better Bus Network as we were going through it, where some service in Aurora Hills, this area right here, was being eliminated. So we wanted to have service that bolstered that and kept those connections for residents in that area. And Route 87, essentially just simplifying the routing and numbering and make it easier for people to plan their routes. This route currently has 3 different routing configurations, 87A, 87X, 87P, essentially put together that way because there was a lack of resources to provide the frequency that was necessary. So some of those route configurations are short routes. We're just proposing to run the whole route, add the resources to it, make it simpler for people to use. Next is our midterm goals. First, Route 42, expanding service hours slightly and providing more consistent schedule. These changes are essentially to improve the reliability of this service. It does require adding buses, so there is a cost while there isn't a significant change or increase in service, resources need to be added to improve the service reliability. Route 43, this is a route that we got a lot of comments on. We are proposing to extend to the Clarendon Metro, and this currently comes from Courthouse down to Crystal City. So we are proposing to expand to Clarendon and connect to Crystal City. This serves the purpose of providing what is somewhat of a weak connection from North Arlington to Crystal City that we identified in our gaps analysis. A lot of comments we received asked for this to be extended to Ballston. Unfortunately, due to the amount of service that's already at Ballston and future demand for service at Ballston, it just isn't feasible for us to do that. There isn't a lot of service that will go over in the north that where we do have connections along Courthouse and Clarendon, along Clarendon and Wilson. So while we did hear that comment, that it's not really feasible. Now some really big changes in the north. Route 51, redesigned this route to connect to East Falls Church, Virginia Hospital Center, and Roslyn. Currently, this runs from Ballston to the Virginia Hospital Center and essentially serves as a shuttle. We're talking about extending it out to the Roslyn Metro, coming down Washington to provide service to a middle school in this area right here, coming back to the hospital through Ballston, along Clarendon, pick up the southern half of the Route 61 and go to Roslyn. This provides a lot more opportunities for people to use the bus and have a one-way, a one-seat ride along the corridor. Route 52, this blue service here. Again, to reconfigure this, essentially to pick up some additional services that are being eliminated along what is currently Route 62, increase the service hours and frequency, and see if we can get people with a little more reliable, a little more frequent, and a few more hours of opportunity to ride the bus to see if we can encourage ridership in the North County. Route 54, this purple route, essentially connecting from up here where the 53 previously ran. The 53 has been eliminated, and this is the segment right here, which is no longer there, has been eliminated because it's a very low performing segment of that. The 54 will pick up what used to be the 72, used to run up to Rock Spring. We're proposing to move the 72 into Virginia Hospital to provide another connection from Boston to Virginia Hospital Center, and also provide 1 or 2 trips in the morning and afternoon to serve schools over here in the north part of the county. And finally, it might be a little hard to see, but you see a gray area right here. In this area where we are eliminating the 53, we are proposing a micro-transit area. There's still a lot of study that needs to be done on that. Essentially, this would serve as a first and last mile type service where you could pick it up in the neighborhood and get to, say, East Falls Church or Paulston, or another major transit hub or bus stop with a lot of services. This would not be intended as a door-to-door service. Again, this is just to connect to the high-frequency bus network or high-frequency rail network and help people with first and last miles. And okay, I think where was that supposed to be? Okay, we'll go back to that. And finally, the long-term recommendations we're making. For Route 41 and 45, increase weekend frequency to fill gap from eliminated service. Essentially, that is what we want to do is pump up the weekend service a little bit. We have already increased the existing weekday service, and we do want to get the weekend service bumped up a little bit. So for the 45 and the 85, there's 2 other recommendations here, and they are in the long-term timeline. And I want to mention this before I talk about this. Arlington County, we view Metro Bus WMATA as the regional carrier in this area. They provide a service that connects, the outer counties, Fairfax, to the inner city coming through Arlington. What we're really concentrating on doing is leveraging that high-frequency, robust regional network by providing connections with Arlington County service. One of the things we did notice as we were going through the Better Bus service, there are a couple regional connections that at times did not appear or didn't appear with the frequencies that we would have liked to have seen. And these recommendations for the 45 and the 85, I want to make very clear, we view these as important connections. We don't necessarily say this is service that Arlington County is going to be running, but we want to keep this discussion. The Route 45 will connect to, there's a plan for a BRT along Route 7. That BRT will connect to East Falls Church, but we think it is extremely important that the people along Columbia Pike also have an opportunity to make that connection. That's a connection that takes you all the way into Alexandria, all the way up to Tyson's. And we just think that that is an absolutely 100% necessary connection for the people in Arlington County, particularly the Arlington Mill neighborhood, to have. This connection did show up again, in the Better Bus Network with the 16M. So again, long-term, we want to make sure it stays in the discussion. The connection, not necessarily who's running it. And then I'm going to skip to the 85, and you can see the 85 is the route that goes through Aurora Hills to Crystal City, and now you see this leg down to Potomac Yards. Again, in the Better Bus Network, we did see an increase in frequencies along the Metroway at one point, and we were very concerned about this connection. This connection would not run along the Metroway. That is a Metro bus exclusive right of way in Arlington County. It would run parallel along Route 1. Again, this is a connection outside the county. We view this as an important regional connection, and we want it to stay in the discussion as we move forward. Route 74, the blue route here, currently another one of the commuter routes, but what we're proposing to do is increase the span of service and the frequency, and have this go to Crystal City and provide a connection to Longbridge Aquatic Center. Route 77 is a route from Shirlington that comes up in here to Courthouse. Again, we earlier in this plan, we provided some increased it started running on Sunday, and then coming back later to increase the weekday service. And I forgot to mention the 75. Again, as we mentioned earlier, we increased weekday service, coming back and increasing the frequency of weekend service. And yeah, that is the recommendations we were making. I know I talked way too fast. I threw a lot at you. These recommendations are still online. If you go to our transit strategic plan, the public comment closed at the end of July, but you can still go in there and look at each map and then look at each recommendation individually so you can get a better idea of what's going on. And then I think we're going to go back to this slide, and I think is this where you pick it up with?
Well, actually, I was just going to wrap it all up.
Okay.
And just say, I mean, you can see how much work has gone into this plan over the last, it's been more than a year. And we've looked at every single route. We've listened to every single comment and looked at what's the best way to deliver the services that we have in order to grow the ridership. Number one, to react to what's already happening. And number two, to be in a position to allow the service to grow and to attract more people to the services. So what you've seen are short-term, mid-term, long-term recommendations that could shift around. These are what we're suggesting at this point, but we know we wanted to share it with you all. We wanted to share it with the public at large. And then we also are going back to some of the stakeholders that we talked to previously with the Transportation Commission. Obviously, we have to talk to our county manager and then the county board, because at the end of all of this, the county board has to adopt this plan in order for us to submit it to DRPT. And this is a legislative plan. It's legislated so DRPT is able to know how financially they're going to be able to support all the transit systems within the state of Virginia. So this is critical. Very critical, because they do provide some source of income or revenue to us after we have put in some of the work. So I wanted to mention that the financial piece of it is always the one that has a lot of questions that go along with that, and will go along with our budgeting process. As we talk and as we've already heard, there are ways that we can either expand or constrain this this plan. A lot of it has to do with how we implement and how we phase it. But at the end of the day, it depends on how much money we have to work with. We get funding obviously from the general fund, and then there are other sources that we get our funding. And so that is the next phase that we're looking at as we move into going to the county manager and to the county board. So that's where we are right now, and just opening up the floor to see what questions you might have for us at this point.
Well, I've got one comment, question. So when are you looking to get it to the board?
We are proposing between either October or November.
Okay. So that's pretty quick then.
Oh, it's very quick.
Yeah.
It's very quick.
After a year then.
Yeah, but
But there's been continuous updates with them, so they know as we've been moving along. And so really, this is the point where we've done everything. This is kind of pencils down for us.
Mhm.
And then really the next step is, what do we implement? How much money do we have?
Yeah.
And then what do we implement with that amount of money?
And another question I have is, you mentioned serving several of the schools, Wakefield and Kenmore Middle School. So in your analysis here, you're seeing that the patterns of the buses fit nicely with, where the students are coming from home to get to school and that kind of thing?
It does. It does appear that. I think at this point, I think Swanson Middle School was the only one that we didn't have direct connection to, but Metro does. And so it helps us that with the iRide program, and now that we're expanding it to Metro, that opens up another avenue for students to be able to have school service. But we looked at APS. Lauren made sure that we did that. She's been actually helping to really shepherding the whole iRide program as we've been doing the fare free. So we've looked very, very concentrated looking at where schools are and what the patterns are.
Yeah, I know the schools have had trouble having enough drivers, and equipment to handle all the students. So I'm sure they're excited that, potentially you can pick up more of the students and not have so much pressure on them for, providing the service.
It has been, we've shown that it's been a successful program. Yeah.
But riding along that is our had issues with finding bus drivers.
We've been able to maintain, and Clinton, you might want to jump into this, but we've been able to maintain our operators. We're, knock on wood, I don't know, I'm seeing in here. Yeah, but they've done a really good job of keeping operators, and there's been some turnover, but they continue to have a steady flow.
Is part of that maybe that the ART operators are really full-time, whereas some of the school bus operators are part-time, and they're looking for more hours
That could very well be.
and benefits and so forth.
Very well be.
I don't know how the near term, medium term, and long term align with the ZEB transition plan, but is that like a constraint to increasing the service, like that medium and long term plan? Because you'd maybe to procure buses that you can't charge or maintain. Is that a?
We looked at that somewhat. We really are waiting for the ZEB study to be completed. But we're already ahead of the game with ordering 4 electric buses to be piloted. And then we're also planning to keeping our fingers crossed, to do hydrogen fuel cell as well. So we're not really saying we're constraining anything with regards to vehicles right now. At the end of the day, whatever service we put out there, we have to get vehicles that can facilitate all of it.
Okay, other questions or comments?
I just have one more. I think it was Clinton's last slide. He had a number of priority issues. And one of the very bottom was free fare for art. Is that now off the table?
No, that's not off the table, James. Why are you putting me on the spot? It's not off the table, but I will say that we're planning to do a fare study. And one of the actions that we're going to have to take as we look at the fare study is, what does that mean? How does that impact us? That's where your vehicles and being able to keep up with the people that ride. We don't know what that means yet, but we have to go through a fare study before we could, suggest something like that.
Thank you.
If I can, it's important to note that, this study is on service, and if you look at that, safety is near the bottom. That's something we do every day. It's not necessarily addressed by service. We're talking about the service. So yeah, we wanted to make sure we had everything. We are looking at that. Real time was mentioned more than once, and Joshua talked about that today. So those are absolutely important. Definitely not off the table.
So
the final report will have time estimates, like how long is midterm, for instance.
Yeah, I would say, 2 to 3 years for each.
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years to 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
For each.
That's one of the things I meant to mention. For short term, probably 1 to 3 years, midterm, 4 to 6, 7, and then 7 and beyond.
So when the board adopts this, this point, are they adopting the concept as opposed to definite, service levels and that sort of thing?
What we're providing them are specific recommendations. How that'll come back to us, we're not quite sure, but what we're providing are the recommendations that you see. Unless we hear some things in between now and adoption, that's the plan right now.
Okay.
And we go back and we have to revisit it every year. So that's why I said things could shift. Something that's in midterm may move up to short term.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you're regularly monitoring service and all that sort of thing, and changes in service to, best meet the needs and also capture the opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to have performance standards in place to determine, some of the routes where we know that there's been low ridership, and we're taking the chance and throwing more service out there to see if there's any response to that. If it doesn't happen after 18 months or so, then that might be a recommendation for elimination. But, the first thing to do is to try to provide service.
Right.
And see if people will react to that. And if it doesn't, it's like, okay, I think we've done our due diligence.
Yeah. Okay, other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, now we've got the Arlington Transit and STAR performance metrics.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, let me know if you see the STAR service metrics report displayed on the screen.
Yes.
All right, so this is just a graphic representation of the metrics that we have captured for the STAR service for fiscal year 2023. We capture everything from trip schedule to completed trips to metrics on the STAR call center, calls received, calls answered, and all the way down to complaints, where you can see if you add up all the complaints probably across the entire year, we may be just at 100. So we're very proud of that. Very proud of the amount of time that the STAR call center folks are answering the telephones. You can see for the month of June 2023, in the very far right-hand corner, all the way toward the bottom, they were averaging 9 seconds for the 3,777 calls that were answered. The average was them being answered in 9 seconds. This data is available on the Arlington Transit website if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the data. And now I'm going to just go and look at it another way graphically. One of our other outstanding interns, Ms. Lauren Breyer, who I think is sitting there in the room, she helped develop this Power BI. I'm going to switch to that so we can take a look at the fixed route metrics. Give me one moment. See if I can pull this up. All right, on your screen now, we should see lots of wonderful graphics in different color lines. Please confirm that you all see this.
Yes.
So what I'll start with is ART system-wide ridership. The black line is fiscal year 2023 or calendar year 2023. As you can see, this black line, as it is trending all the way up through this past July, it is trending above this pink line, which represented calendar year 2021, the blue line, which represented calendar year 2022. And then you can see this orange line where in March and April, where the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic hit. So you can see that we haven't got back to the point of 2019, the last full year that we had pre-COVID. However, ridership is trending back. So that's a testament to the work that you all are doing and folks getting back on transit and trusting that transit is still a safe and reliable way to travel. So we're very proud that ridership is trending back in the right direction. Of course, all of this is on our website. I won't go into ridership by route. You can check this at your own personal leisure. You have the option of going, and whatever your personal favorite route is, you can actually go in and pull this by route. I'll go next to service efficiency. And this graph, of course, represents fixed route service as a percentage by month, and is the percentage of service ultimately delivered. So you can see here in the black line, we are completing the majority of our trips. You can see this is running neck and neck with previous years, all the way up and through July. ART's on-time performance. Of course, the pink line being one of the COVID years, of course, on-time performance was very high because there weren't anyone riding the bus. You can see here in 2022, people started returning and on-time performance was going down. And here is 2023, the black line. We're right about 80%. Of course, we want to see that improve. And so that will also improve with the presentation where Josh gave earlier about fixing those real-time issues to make sure that we are actually getting accurate data. Star ridership, this is just a graphic representation of FY23. You can see here where ridership is increasing over the past couple of years of those COVID years, and then completed trips. Again, the number of completed trips are trending upward. So we're very happy that we are improving, that service is returning. To what levels, that's yet to be seen, but people are beginning to once again think of public transportation as a mode of choice. So we're happy about that and continue to encourage folks to utilize public transportation to get around for their needs. And that's all I have on that. Any questions?
What's the on-time performance goal for ART?
Let me go over here. I'm going to say off the top of my head, and someone in the room may correct me if wrong, it is 85% is the on-time goal.
Okay. And what typically historically has been the biggest problem we've had with, not reaching our 85 goal? It's been mechanical, other issues.
What I would say that historically, right now, I know one of our biggest issues is this real-time thing, being able to identify the schedule to be able to pick up the actual trips versus the scheduled trips, as Josh actually talked about earlier. And you can see kind of the on-time numbers in previous years here. Of course, these are the COVID years, so these are a little bit skewed.
And if I may, Clinton, I'll just add that really our goal is 95%.
95.
Yeah, yes. But I would say that what is contributing to what's happening, one thing is that we've changed how we're tracking on-time performance through our new communication system. And I think Josh and Clinton alluded to that. But the other piece of it is we have a fleet where we still have about 16 buses in the fleet that are coming very close to the end of their useful life. So we've actually had our fingers crossed over the summer. Last summer, if you all recall, we really had a really tough time with ACs. And this year it hasn't been as much, but we're really just seeing that buses are just older. We've got buses that's got 300,000+ miles on them, and it's time, and which we've just ordered 15 more buses. But we still have 16, even once those 15 get in, we still have 16 more buses that we need to get rid of because it's just so old. And that's exactly what's happening. We do have our contractor that's trying to stay on top of the maintenance issues. But those buses that we're replacing soon, like within the next year, and the 16 are part of a company that is no longer around.
Okay.
So you can imagine how hard it is to get parts.
Yep.
But that's kind of where we are. But I mean, considering we've got old bus,
Right.
a third of them are older buses, I'll put it that way. I think, for us to be having the kind of on-time performance that we have, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Remind me, what's the total fleet size?
78.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is there a plan to like procure buses in the future so that it smooths out so that like rather than having 16, procured in 1 year and then they fall off, it's like, 2 or 3 like each year fall out, maybe at like the end of the useful life of 20 years or something?
It's kind of hard to do it, and particularly at this point, because once you get the buses, that's when the clock starts ticking. And for us, or for any transit agency, you have to keep a bus 12 years at least. But what will happen, number one, we have to be very smart on the buses that we get and making sure that the manufacturer is going to be around for a while. Right. And those things, you can never know how that will happen. But I think, and I'm trying to think over the course of ART's lifetime, I mean, that has been probably the tenure of buying buses. Because ART still is a young fleet, when you think about it in the scheme of things, we're only 25, a little over, maybe 25, 27 years old. So buses were being bought in big tranches at one time. And so that's how we're in this pattern of 15 buses, 10 buses, because that's how we were growing over the course of time. So it might be a little hard to get out of that. But what will determine it is, how we make our next purchases in the future. And the propulsion and all of that goes toward that.
Yeah, are there any savings to be had with cooperative purchasing with other systems, either Virginia or other states?
Actually, we buy off of the Virginia state contract.
So that exists?
So that exists.
Okay.
And previously we've also ridden on other transit agencies' contracts. Like we brought buses out. I think our last order before this most recent one was off of the WMATA contract. So we're able to get in that way. If we were to try to buy our 10 buses or whatever amongst a behemoth like WMATA, we would never make it. So.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, if not, next item is the WMATA budget shortfall update. Was there a comment? Okay, so let's go to the WMATA budget shortfall update. Kirk.
Evening, everyone. So I'm going to start off with where we've been, then I'm going to go on to the where we are now, and then I'll hit the what's next.
Hey, Kirk, but you're from up north, right?
That's correct.
I bet you're happy you're not up there now with all the storms they're facing.
Right. Yeah.
Rain in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I've been following that stuff closely because my mom still lives up there. So, so where we've been is the WMATA board was in a recess during August, so they didn't meet at all to discuss the budget. In the board meetings in July, they didn't discuss the budget. The last time that they discussed the budget was in June on the 22nd, which was the first time that they had openly spoken about the deficit in any detail. In FY24, the budget used up all the COVID-19 federal relief money that had been getting them through the pandemic when there was lesser revenue. So that is a major contributing factor that there's no federal funding in FY25. This presentation will be PDF'd and sent out to you, but there's a link there where you can read in depth the report from the Chief Financial Officer to the Board of Directors explaining the budget situation. During her presentation on the 22nd, the CFO laid out a forecast of the deficit, and she categorized it in that there were three different major drivers to it. One is the jurisdictional subsidy credit. At the beginning of the pandemic, when the different jurisdictions were receiving less service, but technically paying the same amount, WMATA decided not to do the 3% increase. And they also gave the jurisdictions a credit for the subsidy because they had received the ARPA funding, which was nice of them. The next thing that she put as a driver was the decreased revenue since the pandemic. And as you guys have seen in the ridership everywhere in the country plummeted during the pandemic. And if nobody's riding, that means they're not paying fares, and that means that there's much less revenue. And the final line here, she says that the total in FY25, the total revenue is expected to be approximately 288 million below the pre-pandemic levels. And that's with the ridership slowly returning. She also quoted the inflation and collective bargaining agreements as the third driver. The cost of everything has gone up. Steel, the cost of buses, cost of fuel, all of that has gone up, as well as the cost of living in general that they need to be paying the wages for. So in this chart, you guys can see this chart, right?
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see you see my mouse?
No.
Yeah. It's hiding from us.
All right, you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. Where the orange federal relief ends, and the red starts, you can see that they actually depleted the federal relief monies in FY24, as I had previously mentioned. And in FY25, they're down 75 billion or $0.75 billion at that point. Something to keep in mind, you see that big swath of red. Each year, even if we come up with the 750 million deficit, the following year we're going to see again a bigger deficit, and so on and so forth, until the way that WMATA is funded gets changed. So if you look all the way out to FY35, you'll see that on the operating budget they have a $1.2 billion deficit. On the next slide, we're looking at capital. This is what goes into state of good repair and buying trains and doing new BOS, whatever alternative they choose for that. In FY35, we're looking at a $1.5 billion deficit on capital. So you add those two together, and let me just make sure. Yep, that's $2.7 billion deficit when you combine operating and capital. So obviously something's got to be done. This is a ring chart here off to the left showing that 25% of the budget is made up with the deficit. So the big thing in this is that no matter what happens, WMATA can't do it on their own. In fact, we have to keep in mind, as of right now anyway, there's legislation that says that we can only pay 3% more per year. It's called the 3% cap. So even if we had $0.75 billion laying around and we wanted to pay WMATA, technically we can't right now because of the 3% cap. So that gets us to where we are now. At this point, NBTC, the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, which is across the street diagonally from where you guys are sitting right now, they've created a WMATA operating funding and reform working group. Lynn Rivers and I are both on that, as well as Way. And we're trying to identify possible funding sources, different thinking outside the box, trying to figure out where different monies can come from. The Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, otherwise known as DRPT, has stated that they do not anticipate that a large new dedicated revenue source will be addressed in the upcoming General Assembly session, and local jurisdictions should plan accordingly. That's sort of pointing to that 3% cap thing. DRPT strongly encourages MVTC to develop a bridge scenario to address the FY25, FY26 deficits, and believes a permanent solution may take at least 2 years to implement. So MVTC is currently working on bridge scenarios at the suggestion of DRPT, and I am on the bridge scenario work group. We have a meeting next Wednesday, I believe. And that, rather than just look at the different funding sources or revenue sources to try to pay the thing, we're trying to figure out what exactly we could do in the 2 years in order to just bridge the gap to find efficiencies, etc. And what's next? So there's a board meeting this Thursday, and they're not going to be speaking about the budget. However, on September 28th, the WMATA board will be meeting, and they're going to receive a presentation from the CFO and Vice President of Strategy and Planning and the Vice President of Government Relations, entitled Budgetary Matters. That is on the tentative agenda for that date. It could be switched, but I believe that everybody's chomping at the bit to hear more about the budget. That ends my presentation, and I am more than willing to enter into a discussion.
Well, it's a pretty daunting deficit.
Well, they on June, what was it, 22nd, when they did talk about it, the word deaths or the term death spiral was used at least 5 times. They talked about rail and bus service would be cut 67% with no service after 9:30. All but 37 of 135 bus lines would be eliminated. Remaining customers would experience 20 to 30 minute waits on all rail and bus lines, and cuts to fixed route service would reduce Metro access service area and operating hours, because Metro access is tied to the fixed route and the rail. And if you're cutting them, then Metro access wouldn't be running in those areas at those times. So that basically kills transit in the region. So one of the things is, if you remember in, what was it, 2019, they were talking about a lot of draconian cuts on the fixed route side and to balance the budget. And we were able to come up with those monies. This is kind of the same thing again, where they're throwing stuff out there, but this time the amount of money is unfathomable, right? So that's why there's so many different groups right now trying to figure out how we can do this.
Are you getting any ideas from any of the other transit systems facing the same deficits?
We are in a unique situation because normally a transit system like the T up in Boston or the MTA in New York or that they reside in one entity, right? One city or one state, and they can deal with like taxing to pay stuff off. I believe Bart just recently passed some stuff where through taxes they were able to bridge their gap and make it past FY25. Metro deals with basically 3 entities. You got Northern Virginia, Maryland, and the district. And that means that all 3 different legislation the legislature would have to be set to do that. Virginia, as you know, in Richmond isn't necessarily favorable of what's going on up in Northern Virginia here. So the likelihood of getting all 3 entities to agree on that is kind of nil. They have to do them each on their own. What DRPT told us was that the sub-jurisdictions like Arlington and Alexandria and Loudoun, etc., we would all have to basically figure out what we want to do with taxes, etc., and bridge the gap. So you can look at the other agencies, but nobody runs like Metro does.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kirk, this is just a drop in the bucket, but how are we coming with the fare evaders? Getting any money out of them with the new gates?
The fare evasion has been reduced at the stations that do have the new gates, but the new gates are only at a few stations. So I've even seen people squeeze their way through those gates, even though they're like 5 feet tall. They've been able. I've heard tell of people still jumping them. Which, look out for the next Olympics. Somebody from DC is going to win that high jump and all of that. But people can squeeze through, not necessarily at the way it's done down at Courthouse. If you guys took the train, there are gates down at the Courthouse station now. But at Fort Totten, they have dual saloon style. Downstairs, they just have one that opens. But with the saloon style, they can still just push their way through. We won't be able to fully understand the revenue situation until much more reporting's done and it's been put into more stations. Also, keep in mind, WMATA just installed all new turnstiles at the stations, right? So we spent a lot of money on that, and now we're going back and refitting those. So that's costing money to get money. So it's going to take a while before you actually see the savings or have the data to report the savings. The cool thing is right now, though, is they are gathering the data of how much fare evasion is going on, and that is being entered into the ridership, not for ridership reports, but for overcrowding, etc. They can now get a better sense of how many people are actually on the trains.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments for Kirk? So Kirk, please let us know when you figure this out.
I'm working on it.
We're waiting for your answer.
Yeah.
I'm working on it, but the stuff that I keep bringing up, like when you think about the cost, it's generally about 70% of your cost is on the employees that run your system, and they're in general they're a unionized workforce. But there's this thing that I didn't understand because I didn't know about it, is called the Wolf Act, where they can't get involved with the amount of money that WMATA has is not a factor when it comes to the amount of money that the union can negotiate during their collective bargaining agreement for their staff to be making. Which I have never heard anything like that. once again, WMATA is very much different than everywhere else. But that would be another act of legislation that would have to be done to get rid of the Wolf Act in order to say, hey, union, whichever, we only have this much money. What you're wanting to do costs more than we have, and we'd have to shut down the system. The Wolf Act stops them from doing that.
All right, well, thank you very much, Kirk, I appreciate it.
All right, good seeing you guys, if only in virtuality.
All right. All right, next item here is the report from the Accessibility Subcommittee. Alexa?
All right. Hi, everyone. We did meet earlier tonight, and we did have several people giving public comment. Let me know, Laura and Herschel, if I report this in any way inaccurately. But people were very concerned about there is a survey where people can give feedback about STAR, but it's not very clear exactly what's wanted or exactly what the county is looking to do with STAR. And people were very troubled by that. How can I comment on policy proposals if I don't know what they are? As I understood the response from the county, it was, well, the previous team came up with proposals. They were terrible. Nobody liked them. Everybody was all upset. We decided to take a step back and try to gather more general information about what STAR is, how it works, what people like about it, what people don't, so that we can use that basic information to help structure any new ideas that we have for proposals. And so, to my mind, there was back and forth about that. I have the impression that the community's concern is that what they don't want to have happen is for similar proposals to arise seemingly all of a sudden, because they're not really saying what feedback they're looking for and what feedback they're not. My personal feeling, speaking for myself and not for anybody else from the subcommittee, was that I think that as a community, we should take advantage of the time we have and the willingness from staff to rethink things from the ground up and, try to work as closely as we can with them to let them know, what sorts of things we need from STAR, so that, whatever proposals they eventually do come up with won't be such an intense pain point for the community. But Herschel and Laura, would you say I got that pretty much right, or?
Yes.
Herschel, do you have any comments? Okay. Any comments from staff?
Yes, I see Wei is on the screen.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add that we reported to the committee that we started the public engagement process that we've been talking about. It's been delayed for a while, but we've started the process with online survey forms, the ability to use the call center to get feedback. And we're really going back to the basics. Those who use STAR, what has been your experience? How do you use STAR? How often do you use STAR? And so some of that basic information is the first phase of what we want to do. And then we'll go into the next phase of how we can get more specific and how we can address those issues. So far, we have mailed, I think, almost 1,400, a little over 1,400 postcards to all STAR users. And because we want to hear from those who are actively using the service, not actively, everybody who's certified to use STAR, should have gotten a postcard if they haven't by now, but we've taken their information from the STAR database. And from that point on, we are still planning on going through an engagement process. And so that's where we are today.
Okay.
Wait, did I cover it, or you want to add
Yeah,
to
you
that?
did. I just think this meeting is a perfect time for me to draw a parallel. Remember, we talked about TSP, and there's the nice slide Paul put on, here's the first engagement, and then we did a gap study, and then we did the proposal, we went out again. So I will say that's a parallel process, which really is following the county's communication and engagement guideline. Is let's not start with like, hey, we see these as problem and here are our solutions. Let's start with what are people's experience, which the TSP did the same thing. We asked people to give us feedback on, their experience writing art as a whole. And then later developed recommendations, and recommendation was then engaged, and we got a lot of feedback. So we arrived at a list of recommendations that we kind of know we've heard from a large group of the community, people who use transit. We hope we can achieve the same level of engagement with art, although the user group is smaller, but that's not to say you're less important. It's very important service we're providing. So we're hoping that we can follow the same method and arrive at a good conclusion. And Clinton, I see you come up and you may have more to say.
And just to put a bow on that, we are seeking input from this committee as well. Just other places that we would need to do public engagement. We've started with the survey with phase 1. And so if you all have any ideas on how we can engage the STAR community or interested persons, please let Pierre know and we'll get those together so we can continue to expound upon this engagement.
Yes. And if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen, which this is the art website. This is for folks here that if you want to provide input or if you want to share the information with someone you know and who want to comment, you just need to scroll down, and this is the first thing, STAR feedback opportunity. And by clicking on this, it will lead you to the feedback opportunity where there is the form.
Okay.
So that's my quick way of saying, if you know of anyone who might have missed a postcard or something, and also this committee, if you want to make comment, please do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dwight.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, any additional items from committee members or staff you want to bring up? Okay, if not, our next meeting is Tuesday, November 14th, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody then. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yes.
So the process